Hello everyone, welcome, thank you. Let's stay present, and the subject of our study is mind and the mental factors according to the Sutra, as well as the Shastras, as well as Tantras. Before we begin the teaching, we will do the reading and reflecting on how grateful and how delighted we are to discover Dharma and know it and believe, and how true it is, and how much better we are when we are able to tune our mind to the teachings, and how much it teaches us. How much we don't know, but little we know how big it helps, how much it corrects without too much drama. How much it gives space to us and clarity. So many things to conceive, which is inconceivable. That's why I say Buddha is inconceivable, Dharma is inconceivable, and Holy Fellowship, the Sangha, is inconceivable. But yet, we seem to have a mind that at least can glimpse the inconceivable one. So, with this in mind, we do the refuge, and then, of course, we do the four immeasurables, because then we are much better with sentient beings. Otherwise, we misunderstand sentient beings all the time. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Haidere Vyeda Laden Bhavaja Ajevendala Ajarhe Vadavatuebe Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Haidere Vyeda Laden Bhavaja Ajevendala Ajarhe Vadavatuebe Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Haidere Vyeda Laden Bhavaja Ajevendala Ajarhe Vadavatuebe. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those never. May all beings have happiness, and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity free from her judgment and aversion to those near and far, according to the intelligence and predisposition of it, where the eternal Dharma agrelo and come vehicles. Most of them are from the Sutra and largely from the Shastras, which is the commentarial writings by the Indian teachers. And when we refer to mind and mental factors, it is never an objective thing about anything external to the mind. So it's all about the mind and its varieties of mind that has been classified into virtuous mind, afflicted mind, root afflicted mind, second afflicted mind, and then what omnipresent mind. They are what object determining mind there is. So it has been sort of roughly classified in that way. I think those are fairly very rough because unless you have a really good grasp over over your own subjective awareness of how these different I would say mentations, how when they are colored by afflictive emotions, there are different mental factors. And also, of course, all those mental factors are, those mental factors we have discussed so far are all about mental factors in relation to things, in relation to aggression to others, whether you visually express them, whether you feel aggression from others, or whether somebody is showing very sort of kindness towards you, or you're showing kindness. There's always an object there to which you are showing these wholesome mental factors, and so on. So all these things we have covered so far, it's all related to the gross mental factors. Because they're gross, the grossness of them is they're totally dependent on the bodily senses and the sense of consciousness and the relevant domain of the sense organs such as form, sight, smell, and animate, inanimate, friends, strangers. So it's all, whether you feel aggression to you and your family from a person, or whether you feel doubting of somebody, or it's all about someone else or something else with regard to these mental factors. It's very important to distinguish that, otherwise you wouldn't have a clue when we talk about the subtle mental factors that tantric text talks about, which we will deal particularly in next week, and 2 more weeks we have, but also we'll start a little bit tonight. But first we have still 4 of the 51 mental factors which are left to be discussed. They are called variable mental factors. There are 4 variable mental factors. 4 variable meaning they're very, very changeable mental factors, because of course that doesn't mean your anger or aggressions are not changeable, or your kindness, your faith are not changeable, but they're by nature positive. If faith is by nature positive, aggression by nature negative. So these 4 variable or changeable mental factors are, by their nature, they're changeable. So let's go briefly on these 4, and then whatever time's left, we will start going on the subtle mental factors according to tantric literatures. So the 4 changeable mental factors are, the first of these is sleep, So sleep is a mental factor that develops dullness and heaviness, and therefore the imprints or information on our mind is somewhat blurred, and therefore the sense themselves is withdrawing from in contacting sense objects such as form. The eye closes, and somewhat the ear and all the senses are somewhat withdraws. Because of all the sense awareness are withdrawn inwards, it doesn't have the sensory data that actually it has to have. So therefore, sleep is a lot more subtle than all those 47 we have discussed so far. So when a sleep like a subtle mental factor become manifest, when the sleep mental factor comes, then gross mind such as seeing blue flower or beautiful music or taste of flower or wish to read something or talk to somebody, all of this slowly, the mental function is slowly withdraws, and it's just basically restraining from interaction. For ordinary people, sleep therefore helps to restore their body and their mind as well, and thereby, because all the demanding things that we have to our mind and body is not there, so there's not a lot of demand or stimulation, and therefore the sleep mental factor is somewhat kind of inactive mental factor. Because of the inactiveness of it, it is almost like an unutilized mental factor from the wakeful state of mind. For people who practice Dharma, sleeping is a very extraordinary opportunity to turn into sleeping yoga because of the changeability of the mental factor. And because the whole night's sleep could be used as an internal restfulness and also doing the sleeping yoga meditation. Of course, we are not here to discuss about sleeping yoga so much, but for practitioners of Tantra, turning sleep into part of their meditation is one of the very important, because it can induce clarity in the mind, restfulness of the body, and therefore a restoration of your subtle element, not just the gross elements. Of course, everybody knows that when you sleep, you rest, you relax, and so there's none of the demanding operative consciousness are used. Under the influence of sleep, we can dream and so on. But of course, here, sleep is a changeable mental factor, and therefore it is such a waste to leave it unutilized. So, while sleep itself is considered to be valuable by the ordinary gross consciousness, gross mental mind, we desire sleep, for instance. So we desire sleep, don't we? And that way, so that ordinary desire, wanting to sleep. So it probably knows that sleep is good for the body, good for the mind. And so, and we long to sleep early and have long sleep and have undisturbed sleep, because it changes your whole day's nightmare, no daymare, I don't know. Day have your nightmare, or night has nightmare, I don't know. Some people have daymares in night, nightmares in daytime. So anyway, so when you sleep, it changes you. It's changeable mental factor. You may have a difficult day, but when you go to sleep, it completely changes the mental factor, as everything's forgotten. Almost like nothing has happened. Thank goodness the sleep is there to give us a break. So sleep is one mental factor. We spend at least 1/3 of our life, so it can't be not important. It has to be very important. Because everybody tries to sleep at least 7 to 8 hours, which is 1/3 of 24 hours, and then whole lives. If you live 90, you live 30 years. You sleep 30 years. And that's a whole hell lot of mental factor not to change. And most people who sleep well, that definitely restores them, get up in the morning very happy, very well, and very happy. So sleep is a very, very important mental factor. But whatever you have, saw, what you have seen or heard or felt or whatever drama or wonderful things or all those things instantly change as they didn't occur to your mind stream. When you go to sleep, you just completely withdraw from those stories, and then as if as that didn't occur at all. The mind does not remember anything once you sleep. So it's a changeable mental factor. So when you sleep is very deep, then you may dream. Because the sleep is so changeable, the dream can operate. Dream can make you think as something's happening, because of the nature of nature of the sleep. The nature of sleep is neither virtues nor non-virtues. So from its own side, it is very, very changeable. It could be shifted into virtues mental factor. That's why it is called changeable mental factor, and therefore you can use deliberate sleeping yoga techniques in order to not let the mind unconsciously fall asleep, but deliberately go to sleep, and that the mind can enter into Dharmakaya state of mind, and not let it become so animal-like sleeping. Animals, cows are sleeping while munching grass. It didn't even get to swallow the grass in the mouth. It fall asleep, and a lot of people are falling asleep like that. They're doing something and then fall asleep. But one should deliberately go to sleep. Turn that with say, if you do some deity yogas, you fuse yourself being in the realm of the deity and sleeping in that pride of the deity, or dissolve into him, whichever you. Then the sleep becomes changeable into wholesome mental factor, virtuous mental factor, and not only it has a gross function and benefit of the sleep to the gross physical body, but it also becomes a form of some meditation. Sleeping yoga, it's called. So that's when you can change. Whereas others who do not do deliberate act of such doing sleeping yoga, they could have lots of unresolved issues of the day playing up in the mind, fall asleep in that, and then they have really frightful dreams, fighting dreams, fleeing dreams, and all kinds of dreams can have. And then they, as a result of having many disturbing dreams, they were on the bed long time, but they haven't rested very long. So you can see how your sleep could be changed into a nightmare. So that's a changeable mental factor, isn't it? So we all have that. So if you can sleep very well with the right attitude before going to bed, with all the 11 mental factors we discussed, if you bring on that and use the concentration, use the wisdom, use the faith, and then your so changeable sleeping mental factor can be transformed into very virtuous sleeping yoga. If not, it becomes just an ordinary way to restore your body, and otherwise you didn't achieve much from that. A second, the changeable mental factor is regret. The regret is the dwelling on some past events, and then one is disagreeing to what happened or what one you believe have happened, and then you are taking to literally, to personally, you are very depressed, you are angry because it happened, and therefore your mind is somewhat regretful that what you did or what you didn't, what you said or what didn't say, what you thought, what you didn't think, what you make someone do, what you allow someone do or don't, or listen to, or some people might even, they may have been patient with somebody, you know. But then, and on the time when they're patient is a virtuous one, because they then subsequently they were regretting. Now the virtuous thing they did becomes now changeable. It could now completely tip over into negative. That's why the regret is changeable, because if you do some good deeds, you know, people have helped, people have given, people have with somebody so many times, and then later they regret all the help they've given. So that is why called changeable mental factor, because wholesome deeds one performed, but now one is thinking it was a mistake, and that's why it changes previous wholesome deeds into now unwholesome deeds because of the negative regret. But if you have positive regret, which means you have done some wrong deeds, you have not been kind to someone, or you've been a bit aggressive or a bit mean to yourself or someone or whatever, then you later say, what a waste, why did I do that? I regret. Then that is negative deeds you perform in the past, but due to the positive regret, you can change the negative deeds into wholesome deeds. That's why all the practice of confession is only possible if you have, power of regret. Why? The regret, when it's positive, then if you do the regret positive over negative things, then it can alter the negative deeds into positive deeds. By doing confession, for instance. So that's why. So you can see these mental factors, such as the four changeable mental, they're all about things and gross things through what you saw, what you said, what you didn't say. It's almost like interactive things that you didn't know. Whether it's about the thing that is done, or that you didn't get to succeed something and you left half-heartedly, you were nearly there and you just didn't do it later. Then you feel, gosh, I was such a good thing I was doing, but then I didn't do it. And so then you have realized you could have continued, and then developing developing a positive regret over that can then correct yourself. So that shows how regret is changeable, So regret is not the regret is if regret turns guilt, then of course a negative, But the regret is positive and creative, and then it doesn't allow you to dwell in the past very much. So if your regret is positive, if you cheated somebody, if you swindled somebody, if you lied to somebody, if you killed somebody, or whatever, even not as serious as those, but the small things you did, and you now realize that you have done that, and then it changes that negative deeds, however long way back. By regretting, it can be now changes positive, because you will most likely forgive yourself, apologize to other, make a vow not to do again. See, you can see that's why it's called changeable mental factor. Whereas the negative ones, of course, is a totally different one. That's the opposite one. So that's why changeable. It's very changeable. So if one dwells too much indecisively, the indecision, that can also cause the kind of a negative regret. Third changeable mental factors is conception. You can call it discursive thoughts, I suppose. So when your mind is thinking too much, thinking too much, so much so that it can change you from one extreme to the other. You are thinking too much. So thinking too much can be changeable, because it can completely change your mind from doing one thing or another. So you can see the regret and discursive thoughts, they could both be mutually inclusive. Sometimes you're regretting because you're conceptualizing too much, or sometimes you're regretting too much because of that. So you can see these two, the conceptualization, over-conceptualization, and the regret, they both could be one changing the other, or one exacerbating the other from one extreme to another. Say if you are conceptualizing dharmically about whether the self exists or not, whether things are real or not, things are permanent or not. This is good. This conceptualization can change you thinking, oh, things are all impermanent. Of course, this kind of a deliberate kind of attempt to make people think is because our mind is changeable. That's why Dharma is instigating to change your mind. Change your mind, change your thoughts about something. If you're not changing your thoughts, then you're probably angry for long, But you say, why am I angry? Anger is so destructive. Then you conceptualize it. You use logical rationalization. And this kind of rational reasoning enables you to think of something that was negative, bad deeds. Now you are questioning about its veracity and usefulness. Then you are now clarifying your mind. So it is alterable and changeable in the sense that if the thought is thought about something that was negative, and then you're realizing negativeness of the negative, then you can turn that one into positive because you have reasoned it carefully. But if one is thinking irrationally over something, thinking again and again and again and again over something, and then you couldn't move towards the good, you are conceptualizing your doubt, your fear, your anxiety, all these things, all anxiety and doubt, and all these things come from over-conceptualization. And so that's why conceptualization, as the third one, is a changeable mental factor. Fourth changeable mental factor is analysis. Now, analysis meaning that one's mental factor is now. Say you could look in the screen of television where you can see a beautiful scenery of flowers and trees and whatever natural scenery you see, you can see, and of course, when you see the overall beauty of the nature on the screen, but when you really look carefully, these are just this flower, these trees that you see, the color, the kind of size, and so on. This is all this. What you see is just your visual. Your visual consciousness is able to establish how beautiful they are. But the mind itself is now mind has been lent to the eye consciousness to engage into the analytical analysis that you're doing over an visual object, over a visual object, and then your analysis is try to build facts, what it is, what can you do, and how did it arise, and whether it's good, whether it's not good, what kind of the flower it is, and all of this data that you usually try to analyze and you try to see, try to check, all of these what you call analytical mind. So what happens is the result of analysis is changeable, change the facts. As a result of the analysis, your choice will either fall for it or against it. So that's why it's called changeable mental factor. Your analytical result of your analysis can change your mind one way or the other. or you have in your mind, made your mind before, it can help you to make your mind. Or if you have made your mind, your analysis, you can make you to withdraw from the mental factor. So that's why analysis is, analysis is usually says, yes, you can use the drug, it's now good to go. Or it says, no, it's not yet ready to use. So analysis is a changeable mental factor. So these four changeable mental factors, if we look at it collectively what this four means, the sleep, the regret, conceptualization, analysis, these are called changeable mental factors. These themselves are neither virtues nor non-virtues, as the 11 wholesome mental factors, or as the 6 root and 20 secondary afflictive emotions. They are not so clear cut. Because of that, because of the changeability to the wholesome, or to the unwholesome, that's why I call changeable mental factor. It doesn't mean your hatred or cannot be changed. It doesn't mean your faith could be lost. It doesn't mean that. In that sense, they are also changeable. But relatively speaking, these four are more alterable mental factors than anything else. Okay, so that will do about the 51 mental factors. So we have completed from the Abhidharma, higher Abhidharma, going over the 51 mental factors. So that's according to Shastras, because Abhidharma is Shastra. Shastra means commentary and literature, and Sutras are the original words of the Buddha, like one chapter we read from the Udanavarga or from Dhamamapada. That is directly. So there are many other sutric teachings that actually says a lot about these things, but they have been collected and compiled by Vasubandu and Asanga, other Buddhist scholars, in the Shastra. So that will do for the 51 mental. This 51 mental factor is generally listed in the text. Now today we're going to look at the tantras. You see, Tantra is a subject really subject which actually surveys the subtle element of the mind itself, particular to do with how uninfluenced by the object, dualistic objects, and such as form or sound or smell and taste, touch. So if you have sort of a compassion or to somebody, it's because you see their plight, and so you have to use the gross sensorial consciousness to practice some of the things like compassion, like faith and the Triple J. Whereas when we talk about subtle mental factors, it is very different. So there is a big book that has come out in which they deal with this subtle mental factor, gross and subtle mental factors. Yeah. So the text that these tantric texts that they talk about these are based on Guhya Samaja Tantra. And then, of course, Guhya Samaja is a root tantra, and then there are commentary on that, such as Nagarjuna's Panchakrama. Panchakrama is 5 stages. It talks about the 5 stages of Guhya Samaja practice, and then there are many Indian teachers who have given commentaries on the 5 stages of the Guya Samanja. And in that they talk about subtle mind. The subtle mind is very different from gross mind. All the 51 mental factors we've been talking about, they are gross mental factors. They're so gross, like aggression, like hate, like spite, and these things are gross mental factors. So these subtle mental factors are only discussed in the high Anuttara Yoga texts. Like Guya Samanja is the highest Yoga Tantra. And that is all study of consciousness. So consciousness. And so it divides the cover consciousness into two: adventitious consciousness and primordial consciousness. And of course, adventitious consciousness refers to several types of consciousness, such as sixth sense consciousness, so visual consciousness, and seeing when you're seeing a blue flower, or you're hearing classical music, or you're smelling the aroma of a Thai cooking, or whatever. These things are adventitious. Consciousness, because as soon as you see a flower, as soon as you smell, then there is that consciousness. Oh, this is Thai cooking. Oh, this is his music, or whatever it is. So these things they depend on the physical sense faculty as well as the nearness to the range of the object that it can pick the sense data from. So therefore, gross mental consciousness and sense organs and the sense objects, all of these have to work together. With regard to, you can even smell something and then say, oh, that's the same smell I ate in such a country years ago. So straight away you are collecting data from external. Adventitiously, you are walked into a street, you smell that, and straight away you remember something years ago. So and the may be to do with present. You can smell presently adventitiously, but the past smelling subsequent cognizing mental consciousness, because subsequent cognizing mental faculties, it's recognizing what you smelled years ago by exposing to the present. So a lot of our trauma, for instance, or fear and anxiety is largely to do with gross mental factors like these. So these are called adventitious mental factors. So all our root and secondary mental affliction and belong to that. And to some degree, when we go over these 18 natural mental conceptions, because these are what the subject of the subtle mental factors are 18 natural conceptions. These 18 natural conceptions are the natural conception that we all have to when we become free at the time of death. At the time of death, we experience three types of luminosities. These three luminosities, is appearance luminosity, and then radiance luminosity, and then attainment luminosity. So appearance luminosity is when we are dying, and we no longer can see our father or hear our mother or feel the touch of our friend or any of that. We do not have this interactive sense faculty relationship, because we are already so subtle. The 18 natural conceptions are at the brink of death, that we experience these three luminosity. These three luminosities traditionally called the appearance, radiance, and attainment. This is very important, but this should be called three types of luminosity: appearance luminosity, radiance luminosity, which is a radiation of luminosity, and then attainment luminosity. During this time, the person who's dying don't have any interaction with us. This is subjective. So that's why the subtle mental factors are only experienced at the moment of death. So when we have this, just for talking before, the adventitious kind of consciousness. Adventitious consciousness is when the sense organs are still operating with objects. Yeah? But when you're dying, you cannot see anything, you cannot hear nothing, you can't hear nothing, you can smell nothing. All of the adventitious consciousness has collapsed. So then what you have, you have primordial consciousness is only left. So only during the primordial consciousness, then you experience the 80 natural conceptions. The gross adventitious consciousness does not exists from the point of view of operative sense consciousness, but for the person who is dying, the gross adventitious consciousness still arises from the primordial innate consciousness. It's the memories that are imprinted on his consciousness. So it's subtle. Subtle in the sense it doesn't require the sense objects. Yeah? Doesn't require the subtle stimuli. Whereas ordinary, any of the 51 mental factors stimulated by gross objects. Whereas when we are going through the level of near death, then while it doesn't have any form it can see or sound it can hear and so on, nevertheless it arises from the primordial innate consciousness upon which previously imprinted mental propensities are beginning to reflect. Yeah? What is that called? Appearance. They appear. That's why I call appearance luminosity. Appearance luminosity. They occur on the basis of the gross life-sustaining wind and subtle mind of the death. Mind of death manifests. Yeah. So these things appear. We still have the gross life-sustaining wind, but there is no wind that can see the object. If there's no wind that we can see, oxygen or whatever makes the air outside. There's no functional air element between eye and the sense organ, so eye can't see. So usually it always uses the wind to mount on the eye consciousness, then it can see this. You can only see not because we have eyes, but there's wind between us. We're using the energy called wind to mount our visual consciousness. Then it can travel, But say otherwise, we couldn't see the wind traveling between wall and between us and the wall. That's why we couldn't see. That's because the wind is not going. Likewise, they call airtight. You can call airtight. You can say soundproofing. Some buildings isn't soundproofing. What is soundproofing? They make sure the wind doesn't travel. So the gross wind doesn't exist to mount the visual consciousness to mount to therefore have the ability to perceive the sense visual forms. There's no wind. So there's a gross wind and subtle wind. The 72,000 gross wind is not functioning. The internal subtle winds are only operative. During the death process, gross adventitious consciousness that are based on the gross life-sustaining will gradually become subtle. Yeah, gradually become subtle there because there's no external wind. Subtle and dissolve into very subtle primordial innate consciousness itself. Yeah. The state of mind during state during the time of abiding within the subtle primordial mind is called clear light of death. Why it's clear when it's dead, dying? The mind is not dying. Everything else is. So therefore mind is now seeing its own radiance, its own nature, so clear light of death. The death of all gross things is happened. Then it is now able to see its own appearance. Because nature of mind is luminosity. Now the luminosity is manifesting. After that, the gross winds once again manifest out of the subtle life-sustaining wind, which is the basis of the primordial consciousness. Simultaneously, the consciousness having exited from the physical basis of this life established the intermediate state, bardo, and the gross adventitious consciousness arise from the primordial consciousness. All this is stated not in any of the sutras, but only in Tantra. So that's why it's Tantric text always talks about body, vein syllables. Syllable shape. Syllable means shape of the veins, basically. Shape of the veins. And then the shape of the veins are formed by the fluid in them, so we call the elements. The fluids in the veins are moving and circulating because of the vital air, the air, pranic air. So we talk about air, fluid, and the nadis. So in Vajrayana, understanding of Tsa, Lung, Tigle, Tsa means vein. So vein is what the body really is, body, vein. And then fluid in the veins. Fluid in the veins. When the mind is very subtle, the fluids are very, very thin. But when the mind is very thick, then the fluids are very thick. It's got most of the gross ones. And so the blood thickens. You couldn't think clearly. When the mind is sharp, and the blood is thin, and then the pranic air is sharp. So when we talk about subtle mind, we're talking about the body. The vein itself has been purified of the toxicity by the hatred, anger, and so. Because when you're dying, all your gross negativities that you usually have, that is secondary and root, they are not in your horizon. They don't have. So you get an amazing opportunity to be free of the mental imprints playing against you. They just subside from operation. So that's why the Vajrayana Buddhist teachings, maybe other religious traditions, they really are careful with how to handle with the dying body, and well as the dead body, because the gross living person all of a sudden shut down all its operative consciousness, and now it is trying to come to grip what's really happening. So these subtle mental factors, that 18 natural conception that we will go through the list, is all to do with this level. Now, we can take ourselves for example. When the external breathing stops at the time of your death, or just watch somebody die, if you see somebody stops breathing, then what happens is why is they stopping breathing? Is the air is no longer circulating. Pranic air, life force air. Life force air, life upholding air, equally abiding air, upward swallowing air, or inhaling, or all of this stops. Why? Because the reason is the blood flow of the brain is halted. There is no flow of the blood in the brain. Halted, and the brain stopped functioning. They call brain death. And according to general medical accounts, the person is acknowledging as having dead. When the blood, when external breath stops, they almost feel they're dying, because all the information, all the activities, brain stops. However, the text of high Tantra texts, the secret mantra, say that what happens next is sequence of the gradual dissolution. So while a person may be brain dead, but doesn't mean his subtle consciousness has left yet. His subtle consciousness, which is still have mental consciousness, there's a lot of things happening in the downstairs. Upstairs, no working, no sign of life, but downstairs is still, the life is still there. The text of the highest Anuttara Yoga Tantra, says during that time, first thing that happens is the luminosity of the mind itself appears. So the person actually witnesses the luminosity of the mind. Then he can see the radiance of the mind, means various manifestations. We call them radiance of the mind, meaning reflection of the mind. And the reflection of the mind could be extreme, good or bad. They could hallucinatory experiences. And the third is the near attainment. Near attainment is blackout. So usually in the text they talk about the first is the white luminosity, and then red radiance and black near attainment. These are the three colors. Yeah, three colors. That's because your rasana and lalana, subtle, white element and red element, no longer functioning, no longer circulating, and then the red element drops, ascends from the lower part of the body, goes to the heart chakra, and then the white element drops from the above. And then when two collapses there is blackout. So we can call it in a white appearance and radiant red radiance red, and then black near attainment. This is what we call them in the tantric text. During this time, the dawning of the very subtle consciousness happens, and the mind of the clear light of death is still there. At this point, all the sense consciousness have ceased. Yeah, there's no sign of body, no breath, no warmth, there's no temperature. And there's a body's gone cold, breath, the nostrils sunken, and then no movement of the eyes and no breathing. So all the what you and I witnessing the person will regard he's clinically dead, but it is clinically dead. But but mentally subtle consciousness has not left yet. So he's yet to go through the. He will be experiencing this subtle dissolution of the 18 natural conception. 18 natural conceptions happens. So these things are now described in the tantric text. What subtle mental factors manifest to himself. Nobody knows. No doctors know them. No doctors can tell that, because doctors can only study the dying by looking at the body. The body they've been nursing or medicating has totally gone dead and nothing there, so they cannot tell what's going on because it's not a visible objective thing. But these days when someone goes through that and then remains in a deep post-death meditation, because they're recognizing and releasing themselves from these 18 natural conceptions. And they are realizing each of them, and then they are parting from them. So it says in Naropa's commentary on the 5 stages that entities have a twofold mode of being, that when they go into that of the mind and that of the body. In terms of their states, there is coarse, subtle, and very subtle. So that there is subtle mental states. Coarse mental state, very subtle mental states. Likewise, coarse physical states, subtle physical states, and very subtle physical states. Their common mode of being is their indivisibility. Yeah, most people could not recognize which is which. particularly they died with trauma or sadness, attachment, if any of the gross negative afflictions we talk about, if any of the negative mental factors were at play, which most people do when they're dying, they're angry and they're attached and they're sad, so they don't have the freedom not to give rise to negative mental afflictions. So most people are completely gripped hard, arrested by the negativities. They get attached and so on. So it's very important when the person knows in real life that all things are impermanent and these are not really what they are designated as. They just merely designated, but they don't really have anything on their own to stand on the leg to be permanent, to be satisfactory, to be true. They're unsatisfactory, they're impermanent, they are impure. Yet the dying person, most people, even when they're alive, they don't know that. How do they know they are dying? They think the object they're leaving looks more beautiful. The daughter looks much lovelier. And they don't realize the daughter's body is impure. Daughter is unsatisfactory daughter. No, he shouldn't say that, but he should think, oh, no, putting a lot of love to her is, unsatisfactory. This is not helping me. One doesn't think like that. One develops even more attachment. She said, how dare I can part from my lovely daughter? How can I leave this? One actually becomes more attached to people. So one gives rise to all the negative thoughts without knowing they are negative. In terms of the consciousness, when people are dying in general, the sense consciousness are considered gross. The 80 this natural conception that we are about to talk about, and the root and secondary mental afflictions are subtle. Yeah, why is root and secondary mental affliction subtle? But most people don't even know they have it. Most people, when they're spiting, when they're jealous, they don't know they're jealous. They don't know they're angry because they're subtle from their gross mind. And the minds of the four empty states are very subtle. Four empty states are very, very subtle. Furthermore, it is said that among those states, the fourth state, mind of the eighth, clear light of death, is very subtle. Clear light of death is very subtle. The luminosity states, radiant state, and the near attainment state, and the clear light state. Clear light state is the fourth one. Yeah? The bright white light and radiant red light and thick black light, these are three things comes before. In terms of the mental consciousness, it is said that thoughts that are part of the 18 natural conceptions are gross. Yeah? So we will call them 18 natural conceptions are gross. The first three empty states at the time of the basis, namely the luminous appearance, the luminous radiance, luminous at near attainment, are subtle. The fourth empty state, the mind of clear light of death, is very subtle. So when the people like advanced practitioner die, they are staying in this very subtle level of clear light of death. They've gone through the other three states and didn't get confused with them, and then now they're abiding in that very subtle state of mind. That's why the extraordinary care is given how to treat the body and the post-death ceremony for great practitioners. How this consciousness becomes gross or subtle is also determined by the winds that are the basis of each consciousness. The practitioner knows how to control the winds. Even the subtle winds has not left the body. That's why they can regain the composure of the body as if they are fresh. So they are not elemental kind of wind, but non-elemental, subtle, meditative wind. Yeah. That consciousness has wind as its mount. Consciousness has its own wind. That is its own mount, like the horse. So the consciousness rides on the subtle wind to And that's why it is said in Nagarjuna says, it is the mount of consciousness. Those subtle wind is the mount of consciousness. This means that it is the wind that makes consciousness move. Yeah. In what sense is luminous mind, conscious mind moved by wind? The text explains that without relying on the wind, consciousness has no ability to engage with an object. It can engage with an object only if it's activated along with the wind. For example, the Aryadeva's lamp on the compendium of practice says, although that is so, the three types of consciousness have appearance, thus they function when they conjoin with the wind element. This means that although the three, the luminous appearance and luminous radiance and luminous near attainment, which is also translated as immanence, are not physical because they have objects, they fluctuate with the wind. Therefore, engaging with object by way of wind means that the mind engages with an object by mounting the wind. Within that, there are two possibilities according to whether or not the wind diverts the mind to an object. So this shows that there are opportunity for the practitioner to be able to direct his wind to make that kind of interaction. How wind and mind, which are inseparably mixed, function with regard to an object is expressed also in Aryadeva's commentary. It says, all supermundane activities are to be fulfilled by means of the subtle element and the minds of the luminous appearance, and so on, since they are non-physical, having become mixed, like butter poured into butter. Here it states that since they are mixed like butter poured into butter, wind and mind performs their activity regarding the object by way of constituting the same entity. Also, when the gross winds have gradually dissolved and are functioning with increasing subtlety, then the object and mental image within the conscious dependent on them likewise become gradually more subtle too. And Vasubandu and Tantra says, the winds gradually disintegrate, the former into the latter ones respectively, dissolving into their own very nature, and then again into the Muchilinda. So at the time of death, the preceding wind gradually dissolve into the subsequent ones and then continue to dissolve until reaching the subtle life-sustaining wind called the Muchilinda. Muchilinda is a name, tantric terminology, and it says again, Aryadevas, having done all this in the body, they finally enter into the indestructible. And at the time of the moment of death, winds having dissolved the very subtle indestructible wind at the heart chakra, one enters into clear light that is an absence. According to the highest yoga tantra tradition in general, which when each of the four elements, the elements, the earth, water, fire, and wind, within one's own continuum dissolve one into the next, the movement of the wind is reduced and lessened. Finally, when the wind that moves the indicative conception together with the consciousness dissolve into the first luminosity, then the indicative conception cease, owing to which the three empty states, the minds of luminous appearance, a mind of luminous radiance, and minds of luminous near attainment, and the fourth empty state, the clear light of death, arise in that order necessarily. They appear because the movement of each wind has gradually become weaker than the preceding one. Then, at the time of birth, when a tiny movement of wind emerged from the wind of clear light, the luminous near attainment, luminous radiance, and then luminous appearance arise. That's reverse. When you now going to find a new rebirth, it's that the whole thing's reverse this fall, because each wind is progressively becoming stronger and stronger than the preceding one. When out of the wind of luminous appearance, mind of wind becomes stronger, then the indicative conceptions arise. Indicative conception means natural conceptions. 80 natural conceptions. So the 80 This is the 18 natural conceptions now. The 18 natural conceptions of the mind of the three luminosities. So according to Guya Samanja, these three luminosities, as we have seen, are luminous appearance, which is usually called radiant, usually called luminous white. So if we wanted to talk about luminous white, is easier because it's to do with white element. And then luminous radiance refers to the red, bright red. And luminous near attainment refers to the blackout. In the context of explaining these three very subtle minds, these are, of course, totally, we have to go by what the text says, because it's not something you experience, not at the moment. Anyway, you're still alive. So when you die, we necessarily go through this. So a lot of these have to be based on that. The context of these three very subtle winds, a presentation is made of the corresponding 18 natural conceptions. The consciousness indicating three luminosities, which are 33 of the 80 are in the nature of the luminous appearance. That's usually the desire related, and then 14 natural conceptions of luminous radiance, it to do with hatred, and 7 natural conception to do with luminous near attainment. That's due to ignorance. So the white, red, and black are respectively desire, hatred, and ignorance. So subtle natural conception related with these three afflictions, but they're very, very subtle, very, very subtle. So these 18 natural conceptions, as we call them, Rangjung Gyaju Tokpa, Rangshin Gyaju Tokpa, natural, 18 natural conception. This is nothing. This happens to everyone. These 18 natural conception, as well as 108 conceptions similarly mentioned in Vajragal and Tantra, because all of the Tantra texts have slightly different lists, are very subtle consciousness, because they depend on the slightest movements of their own mount, the principal subtle life-sustaining wind. How these conceptions are moved by the wind that is their mount is explained in Naga Bodhi's clarifying meaning of the 5 stages, which says, to present the response to the opponent's objection, wind divorce of the consciousness cannot know an object. It states, it is the mount of consciousness, where the word it refers directly to the wind. So it is through being mounted on a wind that the respective consciousness knows the object. As for the identification of each of the 18 natural conceptions, first 33 natural conceptions in the nature of the first, the luminous appearance, are listed in the 5 stages as follows. So this now lists the the first group, 33 natural conceptions that are to do with luminous appearance, white luminous appearance. And they are, if you're interested to the list, they are, firstly, 1, 2, 3 are called non-desire. That time there's no desire. The person has no gross desire. Why? This is a state of not wanting an object in which it has three degrees, lesser non-wanting desire, moderate non-wanting desire, and great non-wanting desire. So meaning the person is now reducing the desire of gross to the medium to the subtle. So the 3 of the 18 natural conceptions are non-desire. So non-desire. And then Then the 4 to 6, that's 1 to 3. 4 to 6 are sorrow, sorrow. The sorrow which is a mental torment when separate from what one loves, and which has 3 degrees also. Sorrow. First is a great sorrow of losing the loved one. Then moderate, then lesser sorrow. They have sorrow. They're really sad to lose you, but then it reduces, and then it becomes very, very subtle. So those are 4, 5, and 6 is great sorrow, moderate sorrow, and lesser sorrow. That's a 6, and the 7th is peace. So that's when you really experience peace, because you don't have desire and you don't have sorrow. Yeah, so that's why the death is very peaceful. So it's called peace, which is the mind in which peaceful state mind is resting naturally, because it is not hampered by sorrow and desire. If you lack peace in everyday life, it's because we have desire and sorrow, when huge gross ones. And 8th is conceptualization. So conceptualization means which is a state of excitation or the mind thinking coarsely. So the conceptualization is no longer gross conceptualization. So there's no gross conceptualization. There still is subtle conscious conceptualization, but minus the sorrow, minus the desire. When there's no desire, and when there's no sorrow, the conceptualization is a lot more subtle. So that's the number 8. 9th, 11, and 9th, 10, 11 are fear. Is fear. Fear is which is the mind afraid of encountering unpleasant circumstances, so first there is a great fear. And then there's a medium, moderate fear. Then there is a lesser fear. So this is how dying, we not only die physically, but we also die emotionally. So so this is just when during that phase of it, But it can deteriorate if you fail to recognize this when you're bardo. It can come back, So, but if you those who are able to meditate carefully and see them natural dissolution every day, and then they are so unfearful of these things, then they can actually reduce those fear, even the great ones, let alone the moderate one, and subtle ones very easily. So that's up to 11, 3 degrees of fear. And then 3 degrees of craving. Now 12, 13, and 14 are to do with craving, Craving means which is mental adherence to an object, and it is always is craving that. And the first is a great craving, then the moderate craving, and then a lesser craving. So you can see the craving is also does not have any gross craving. So that's up to 14, and the 15 is grasping. The grasping is the 15 one, which is a tight mental holding onto objects of sense desire. So the subtle grasping is there, but it's not gross. Subtle grasping is there, but it's only subtle mental factor of grasping. 16 is non-virtue, meaning which is one's mental aversion or mental ambivalence toward virtuous action. So when you are going through that point of dissolution, then it is the non-virtue is also much subtle non-virtuous thoughts, And the 17th is hunger, which is desiring food. Quite a lot of dying people really desire a lot of food. They say, bring this, but they can't eat nothing. So some of them have died while desiring food. But that hunger for food is also now there, but it is slowly decreasing. You couldn't eat anything, but hunger is there. So subtle hunger will be there. And the 18th is subtle thirst. Subtle mental natural conception thirst is which it desires drink, It can't swallow nothing, but still says, bring drink, you know. And so subtle thirst is expressed. And so that's 18. Then 19, 20, and 22, 21, these three are feeling. The feelings are still there. We were talking about feeling being omnipresent. Yeah, even when you're dying, the feeling is there. So there are three feelings: pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling, which are of all 3 degrees. You know, great feeling, great unpleasant feeling, moderate unpleasant feeling, and lesser unpleasant feeling, and vice versa. Also pleasant, also is great pleasant feeling, moderate pleasant feeling, more less moderate feeling. So that's up to 21. 22nd is the cognizer. 23rd is cognizing, and 24th is cognized. So there being 3 conceptualization of cognizer, cognizing, and cognized, of the subtle natural mental conception. 25th is investigation. The mind is, which is the analysis of what is correct and what is not correct. It's only even on the subtle mind of the dying, subtle natural conception, is there still that investigation going on. That's why we do prayers or something like that. They actually get to be exposed to these some way or another. It helps to investigate the mind. 26th is a sense of shame. You know. They could feel shame even when they are in that constant, but very subtle sense of shame, which shuns the wrongdoing, personal or religious reasons. Okay, 27th is compassion. Even they're dying, they still have compassion. Very subtle. Then 28 and 29 and 30, these 3 are affectionate love, you know. Affection love which is wanting to protect the objects of focus, holding it as a beautiful, wanting to be with them in 3 degrees. Yeah? From great, moderate, to less. These are the affections, 28, 29, 30. And then 31 is hesitation, which is mind of uncertainty. So 22nd is accumulation, which is mind wanting to collect things. 33rd, which is the last one of this, is jealousy, which is a mind disturbed by other people's success. So even during the dying, such level of dying, the subtle mental consciousness does have these 18 natural conception caused largely by desire. So these 33 are to do with the desire. What does this mean is that these are called subtle mental factors, natural conceptions, natural conceptions. Then they are only natural because we have imprinted them. We have the imprint of the whole life's actions of gross 20 secondary afflictions and 6 root afflictions. They have been imprinting onto this so much so the cloth is deeply soaked by the oil stain. You know. So that's why when your sense operative consciousness is not there, you can't see, you can hear, but still the mind is still subtle mental factors still continue to operate even at the moment of death. So therefore, it may look like peaceful, the person is not showing and they may say the body is dead, but no, the consciousness subtly going through all of these 30 indicative natural conception that are all associated with the desire. And hence, going back to the hallucinatory experiences, the person might have feel of everything become bright white, and they don't have any eye to see, but they find themselves so falling into the deep white ravine, you know. They have fear of falling in the deep, and they have this. These are hallucination. They're not falling. They don't have body to fall. They have already body's dead, but yet they have feeling of falling in the deep white ravines. And this is a sign of the luminous appearance of the 32 natural conceptions of desire are subtly manifesting. And they don't know that. They think they're still falling. into deep white ravine. And they feel running. They feel like somebody pushed them to the ravine. And they're clinging on to. And that's exactly this indicative of the 33 natural conceptions that the Tantric text talks about. None of the other Buddhist texts talks about. Even the Sutra text, they don't talk about that. And so the Tantric commentaries talk a lot about it. That's why we teaching emphasize so much care about how to not to do ill will, how to not to do too much greed in this life. Because the more desire and greed you do during this life, the more you have less opportunity to recognize the clear light of white light. The white light, bright light. When that happens, one thinks too bright, and one dies to flee from it, and one keep thinking as you're falling into deep white ravines, chased by dogs and chased by this, and all kinds of hallucinatory experiences happen because one could not. One has so much desire in life. So the more you practice in everyday life, that much you are able to recognize the subtle mental conceptions and not see them as not project them as a ravine, let alone a white one, let alone you who falls it. They see these things as these are because all my gross consciousness is dissolved. Now the 18 natural conceptions, there's no object to desire to, or no object to no one to desire by, no act of desiring. These are all empty of true existence. So therefore, all the understanding and the teachings that you have in everyday life, of course, you can't pull a very magical kind of trick before die. Everyday life, you should slowly reduce your desire, slowly reduce your attachment to things, to whatever they are, because not because you don't have desire, but you don't know the desire themselves can trick you as if they are real, as they're permanent. Because one has longed to keep them, even though they are out of date, and one is keeping them. So one is so deluded in seeing impermanent things as permanent, and satisfactory. So one is desiring impermanent things as a permanent things. One is desiring unsatisfactory things, thinking they are satisfactory, and so because if you didn't do letting go and not desiring, you can't all of a sudden do when you die. So that's why the why we have to study about the mind and mental factors is and mind and whatever thoughts, emotions, afflicted, and for wholesome ones, we deliberately recruit the wholesome thoughts. We deliberately try to restrain and abstain the afflictive thoughts. The more we do that every day, that much you can do less desire, less attachment. We will still need some basic things, basic survival things: the food, clothes, shelter, medicine. We know it's not something you say, look, I really feel like really having lots of pills today. You don't say that. You take medicine because you're told to take, not because you like the color, you like the quantity, you like the taste. We don't take medicine because we desire them. No, we take this medicine because we want to get well. So still desire there, but not because we want to take the medicine for the look of it, for the color of it, for the shape of it. But most of the time we're so deluded, we're deciding things for what they looks like. Without knowing that they are empty, hollow of anything you desire for. So if you don't do the mindfulness practice of abstaining from desire and craving and grasping, you could not all of a sudden realize these. You don't all of a sudden realize clear light of death. But if you practice this teaching in general, and that is then supported by Vajrayana meditation, during which you do not think of yourself as a self, you think of yourself as a light and maybe a celestial, heavenly being, and a Buddha or like that. Of course, you have less chance of getting confused that you of mounting your mind on the wind that doesn't exist. We are so good at creating them. We still have wind when we are not breathing, because the mind is so choked by its own past habituation. It doesn't know how to let itself go free of the others. So what does these 18 natural conceptions talk about is 18 natural conceptions and subtle ones. Why are they? These subtle natural conceptions it's natural for people who've been deluded to remain deluded even when they're dead. And chance of them improving and correcting them there is not that great unless they are correctly informed with the right view of the teachings throughout their life, throughout the everyday life. They must be conversant that everything is impermanent, everything is unsatisfactory, even when they're satisfactory, by the way. Even the satisfactory ones would not last long. So the not lasting is not satisfactory, not unsatisfactory. It's just nature of the things. So if you don't get attached to something which does not exist thereafter, then of course you can't be upset by a thing that doesn't exist, to which you don't get attached to what it doesn't exist. But most people think it's still there. It does, even though it's impermanent. They think it's still there. So until one has really brief, well acquainted and well versed to the teaching and realize them, meditate them, think that thought every day, and then you're still very, very functional every day. But you are much more smart way to live wisely, with kindness to your past, to others, and with less an attachment to not only things but about everything. Because of that, you are not haunted. You don't have these afflictive emotions playing up against your mind. You have much more readily cultivatable, wholesome thoughts in your mind. Then, of course, you can see how many of these natural conceptions can remain. See, mostly not the great ones. You will have the moderate ones, maybe the weakest one. You will have the weakest desire, weakest non-desire, and so on. And so when your mind is not affected or haunted by these things, of course you will die in style. You will live in style too, by the way. You will lose things in style too. You lose, but you're happy to let go. Very good. You're not moaning and groaning, saying, "I lost this, poor me." What? You wouldn't do that because what is there? Who's loser? Who's the loser? You know. First, we have to authenticate the loser. Who is losing what? You yourself is an illusion, let alone all your possessions. So, in illusion, you don't lose anything. So one needs to understand and be very conversant, and realize, have the insight in every day. The basic teaching is so important. Subtle tantric teachings are only meaningful when the basic teachings are up your sleeves, where you really completely comprehend them, and you relish them, you practice them. You always bring the Dharma, inconceivable again and again, and then you will see how much in everyday life you are practicing subtle mind. Every day your mind is clear mind, clear light mind. Your body is necessary for the sake of being in a conventional reality, but the mind is very much it's not subservient to the body. It is the master to the body. It doesn't desire the things that are undesirable. It has to survive just for the sake of the convention. But other than that, it doesn't have any of the gross afflictions. You could almost see the absence of craving and desire. And if you don't get it, you don't get annoyed. And if you have to have something, you have to. But it's not because of you're just tormented by your desire or tormented by your anger. You're not. If it doesn't happen, so much the better. If it happens, it's okay, because your mind is very much lustrously aware of the emptiness of all things, impermanence of all things, and therefore unsatisfactoriness of things that you think is real when they're not. So the right view is essential. Then only the subtle mental conceptions can be facilitated by your meditation, particularly the body vein, the vein in the shape of letters. The letters are subtle letters. Subtle body is in the body of liquid. Your fluid in the body. Fluid in the body is very subtle. You don't produce a lot of biochemical produce that are harmful to the body, because you're not so much always craving things for the body. You don't eat as much. If you do eat, you eat light and very, very small amount. Because of that, your body does not suffer so much because of indulgence. And when your food intake is small and healthy, your growth, your desire has been terminated and lessened. You don't have great desire. You will never get upset over dinner, for instance. Very good. You will never have a quarrel over what you didn't get at dinner, for instance. It's very, very, very powerful, really. There's a lot of quarrel at dinners. Even in the land of abundance, people didn't get the right kind of temperature or right kind of degree of how the thing was cooked or wasn't cooked, and you don't become crook at the dinner table, And the result of that, you don't suffer from indigestion. So there's a lot of these subtle natural subtle indicative 18 natural mental conceptions. To recognize them and to be able to choose the subtle version than the gross version is because if you have already no gross wind operative consciousness there, then the subtle wind is subtle, very subtle. It doesn't have to become gross form of any of the above. You are able to, lessening of the desire is a sign of the right view. And lessening of the desire is also a show of how patient you are. You're not easy to be agitated. You don't get upset over things. You don't get upset over things because you're not winding. You're not putting the wind of hatred. You not have the venom of ill will. You don't do ill will, basically. You see the futility of it, and when your consciousness is not agitatable from that in everyday life, of course the gross subtle body, when it dies, of course don't have these imprints of the prints that you didn't imprint it on. When you die, you only have the subtle imprints that the mind has been subjected to, and they're manifesting. So that's why lots of people fall into the white cliff. There's no cliff, but they see one, and they fall from it, or into it, because of the desire. And that's what all the teachings in the Tibetan book of dead, and what happens when people die, and largely because they didn't do the Dharma, they did do the wrong views, they did the samsara too much, and the result of that, they don't even when the gross body has died and subtle mind is about to realize that one's mind is still havocked by this experience, misinterpret them, thinking I'm falling down in the white cliffs and so on, then one feels chased by dogs and all kinds of things. And one still thinks they're happening. One doesn't see them as illusion because one thinks everything in life is real. That one doesn't think everything in life has illusion. Illusion doesn't mean it didn't happen. Illusion means they are not real and they don't no longer exist. And that's so sane to know what doesn't exist does not exist. Even on a conventional level, it's true. Let alone, you don't need wisdom. It means facts, It's not there anymore. It's just your mind worked up, fixated about it, paranoid about it. These kind of terrible sights and experience of hallucination happens because one hasn't overcome desire, hatred, and ignorance at any one time. How could one all of a sudden be able to realize at the moment of death? It's not possible. So, therefore, study of mind and mental factors, the gross ones, and the subtle ones from what is discussed here in this text, is great teaching for us how to mind the mental factors in everyday life situation, not fall into the prey of the gross and subtle afflictive mental emotions, and try to deliberately cultivate the wholesome mental factors and transform the alterable, changeable mental factors deliberately, such as sleep, through sleeping yoga and regret over negative things, and then analysis, conceptualization, and a meaningful way of rationalizing and reasoning things appropriately. So we will stop there. So this book came out this year, called Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics, volume number 2. And this book, of course, comes from the book itself. It's called The Mind. So all those 51 mental factors we talked about are all in this, as well as huge chapters from Sutra and Tantra, and as well as Shastras. It's a very joint effort of quite a number of scholars. They largely are translation from the relevant texts and commentaries by John Donne and Thupten Jimpa. These books you can get. Conceived and introduced by His Holiness Dalai Lama, of course. Who else? So that's all we have time for tonight, everyone. Thank you. We will do the dedication merits so that we become a little bit more conscientious about our everyday thoughts, mind, and mental factors, metacognitively aware. That's anytime you're practicing, it greatly points you to how to identify our thoughts and not become them, and not become whipped up by them, and know them are just thoughts. Thoughts are very, very transient. Thoughts doesn't like to be recognized. Thoughts is very hard to recognize. It's like the longest tip of the longest hair, By the time you find the tip of the longest hair, you realize, what is the hair? The rest of the hair is all the hair is actually just as tiny as the tip of the long hair. If one of us has just single long hair, it would be interesting, Nobody will notice it. But we say, oh, nice hair, or short hair, long hair. Mind is very fine. You have to spot the yang in the sutra. It says that it's just that tip of the longest hair. The nature of the mind is so clear. You have to really spot it out of everything. You have to eliminate all the non-long hairs. Let's do the dedication merit so that we become a little bit more conversant in our mind and mental factors, not about people and things. Where has been born, freely without generation. Thank you, everyone. Take care.